Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. British PM Keir Starmer, fresh off his meeting in Scotland with President Trump, offered this pronouncement in the direction of Israel. As I said prior to the news, folding in with the French and Macron and threatening to recognize a Palestinian state if Israel does not figure a way to resume aid to Gaza and cement a ceasefire prior to a September UN meeting. Here's the case laid out by the British PM.
On the 7th of October 2023, Hamas perpetrated the worst massacre in Israel's history. Every day since then, the horror has continued. The hostages are still being held today. The Palestinian people have endured terrible suffering. Now, in Gaza, because of a catastrophic failure of aid, we see starving babies, children too weak to stand, images that will stay with us for a lifetime. The suffering must end. Yesterday, I discussed this with President Trump, and we're mounting a major effort to get humanitarian supplies back in by air, and UK aid has been airdropped into Gaza today, and crucially, by land. We need to see at least 500 trucks entering Gaza every day. But ultimately, the only way to bring this humanitarian crisis to an end is through a long-term settlement. So we are supporting the US, Egyptian and Qatari efforts to secure a vital ceasefire. That ceasefire must be sustainable, and it must lead to a wider peace plan, which we're developing with our international partners. This plan will deliver security and proper governance in Gaza and pave the way for negotiations on a two-state solution. Our goal remains a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable and sovereign Palestinian state. But right now, that goal is under pressure like never before. I've always said that we will recognize a Palestinian state as a contribution to a proper peace process at the moment of maximum impact for the two-state solution. With that solution now under threat, this is the moment to act. So today, as part of this process towards peace, I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution.
President Trump responding to Starmer's announcement saying, if you do that, you're really rewarding Hamas. I'm not about to do that. So President Trump not on board. By the way, it is worth noting, as Starmer was taking credit for airdropping supplies in Gaza, CNN reporting, quote, "We are not dogs," unquote. Palestinians condemn humiliation of chasing after airdropped aid in Gaza. Nothing like looking a gift horse in the mouth, as they say, in addition to what we know about Hamas's role in seizing aid intended for the residents of Gaza. I mean, it just doesn't end. The United Nations, Sky News reporting, has condemned airdrops on Gaza, warning they risk killing the starving Palestinians that are intending to help. Don't tell us. Better tell Keir Starmer, who's threatening the Israelis with Palestinian state recognition, or Macron. The anti-Israel propaganda, I mean, it is replete across the D.C. press corps. Those examples, in addition to this, New York Times, we have appended an editor's note to a story about Mohammed Zakaria al-Mutawak, a child in Gaza who was diagnosed with severe malnutrition after publication. The Times learned that he also had pre-existing health problems. Right. We also understand that they cropped the photo of him to not show his not his brother, who is not suffering from malnutrition, who is not underfed, starving. And Adam Rubinstein writing, if you read carefully, this is an admission of a remarkable deception. They ran a story about malnutrition, but didn't include the context that malnutrition is not caused by a lack of food, but by a pre-existing condition, a disease that affects the child's ability to thrive. So, I mean, this is what Sturmer is referring to in part, these indelible images that we've seen, but they're rigged. Some of them are rigged. Others of them are largely the responsibility of a terrorist organization that cares no more for the residents of Gaza now than they did as they lorded over them for the past nearly 2 decades. So what to do in response to Western Europe's Neville Chamberlain redux approach to Hamas and the region? Cliff May joins us, president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and foreign affairs columnist for the Washington Times. Cliff, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you, and I agree with absolutely everything you just said. I would also point out that the New York Times appended that editor's note on their X account. Probably thousands of people saw it, but millions of people saw the picture they got from Hamas, a.k.a. the Gaza Health Ministry, which, as you say, showed a child with cystic fibrosis, and as you also point out, with his brother, not malnourished, not starving, right next to him. The New York, I cannot tell you how it bothers me, the former New York Times reporter, editor, foreign correspondent, that the New York Times runs propaganda from Hamas like that, and when found out, is not even as clear as it should be about the mistake they made and how much of the media will go to Hamas, again, to some Hamas propaganda platform such as the Gaza Health Ministry, and whatever they say, they'll tell their readers as if it's true, and they won't even say this is a Hamas source that has nothing to do with the health. Because Hamas has been, since 2007, the governing authority in Gaza. The Israelis knew it and allowed it. The UN supported it hand in glove. No other factions, no other parties were allowed. And yet somehow Hamas is not responsible for the welfare of Gazans in any way. Keith Starmer doesn't say, Keith Starmer doesn't say, it's really up to them to do something about it. Why don't they lay down their weapons? Why don't they announce a ceasefire? Why don't they say we'll give up all our hostages, and then they can have in return all the humanitarian assistance they want in this enclave, which has been wrecked by the war that Hamas launched. But there's no agency, no responsibility placed. It's either the Israelis do something, or we will reward Hamas, and that guarantees that Hamas will not make compromises. As the U.S. has been trying to negotiate a compromise, the Europeans have been undermining the U.S. efforts. Well,
that was sort of Trump's point, but there's another point too. What kind of threat is it really from Starmer and Macron? You're going to recognize a Palestinian state? Okay, well, where's that going to be?
Who runs it?
Yeah, and then what? Then what happens? Big deal.
Yeah. No. What are its borders? Who runs it? What does it do for? How does it govern? Who are the police force? Does it have an army? Does that army fight the Israelis? Is it at war? How does this all work? No, we're just going to recognize it as if it's there.
Yeah.
By wizardry.
Yeah.
It's going to exist.
Yeah. Okay.
A state, just like that.
Yeah, and then we're going to pretend that that's a two-state solution. Well, it's not going to change the reality on the ground because you so issued this proclamation. I mean, these guys are so. I mean, here's what is going on, isn't it? I'm asking. I mean, this is Starmer and Macron, and it's funny because Starmer and Trump had this conversation about immigration and what's happened in Western Europe. Starmer and Macron have, especially as socialists, have huge Muslim populations because of their multicultural open border policies. They are getting pressure from within their own party from said Muslim populations. And so this is basically press release politics to placate a domestic constituency. It has nothing to do with any sort of solution in the Middle East.
Yes, you're spot on, Dan. That's exactly the case. And that is apparently what is going on. They also want to pretend to be relevant to what is going on, even though they have no relevance to what is going on. And then, yes, the idea of this myth that there is a two-state solution, because you say there is a two-state solution, doesn't mean it. Why don't they say, if the Palestinians want their own state, they can have it. It starts by recognizing that there is a state of Israel, and they are not going to wipe it off the face of the earth. Otherwise, if you create a Palestinian state, and I don't know how you do that. I don't know how if you wanted to do that, maybe what you need is a mandate for Palestine. Has that ever been tried as an idea?
Well,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
After the fall of the Ottoman Empire, that area of the Turkish Empire was renamed Palestine. That was the name the Romans gave to the Jewish territories, Judea, Samaria, etc. And they said, okay, we have a mandate, and the mandate is to try to create nation states. And the nation states were there. And the most important nation state they were going to create in Palestine was going to be a Jewish homeland. Also, Syria was created that way. Lebanon was created that way. Iraq was created that way. And these mandates didn't work out so well in that the empires found themselves unable to create successful nation states really in any of these places.
Right. So while Starmer and Macron are preening for the cameras, okay, so you guys are going to rebuild Gaza. You guys are going to ensure governance of that region that does not include Hamas. What does that look like? I mean, lay it out for us, since you're drawing this line in the sand, as it were.
And I don't think they're saying that. One of the things that shocked me, and I'm not easy to shock anymore, is I knew that the UN had long been acting as the sort of social services organization of Hamas in Gaza. Keep in mind that, again, the Israelis left Gaza in 2005. For a while, the Palestinian Authority and Hamas uneasily coexisted. Then Hamas went after the Palestinian Authority in a small civil war, throwing Fatah members, that's the main faction within the Palestinian Authority, off rooftops, shooting them in the knees, that sort of thing. They took over, and the Israelis said, fine, do what you want to do. In fact, the Israeli theory was, we'll just stay out of Gaza entirely. The Qataris will spend money there, and maybe they'll have something to lose, and they should have, because before this war, Gaza was not a terrible place. Read the op-ed by the mayor of Gaza City about the promenades and the restaurants, the cultural facilities they had, the libraries, all of that. There were poor people there, but it was no worse than other Middle Eastern cities, and there was huge amounts of money flowing in, and the UN was taking care of health care, education, all that, but all under the auspices of them. What I didn't understand is the extent to which the UN became the handmaiden of Hamas. Not just helping, but actually there was no distinction. In fact, Hamas members worked in UN positions. Hamas members who also had UN jobs ended up taking part in the pogrom of October 7th as well. And the UN is full in on Hamas. Now, if you're going to be full in on Hamas, at least say to Hamas, look, you launched a war. It didn't work out quite the way you expected. You expected Israel to be wiped off the face of the earth, but Hezbollah came in late. The Iranians came in late. The Houthis came in late. And there was a seven-front war in Israel, won on all seven fronts. And then eventually the biggest danger, the possibility of the Tehran regime getting nuclear weapons, That was eliminated by a 12-day war that culminated with President Trump bombing Fordo and 2 other nuclear facilities, setting them back by years if they can do it at all. So why don't you do this? Why don't you say, we're giving up the hostages, we're giving up our ambition of wiping the Jews out of the Middle East once and for all, and we want a 2-state solution. But they won't even ask Hamas to do that.
Moving over to Russia, Trump shortened the deadline for Putin to agree to a ceasefire or sanctions on oil exports, and other measures will be taken by the administration. So says Trump. Now it's 10 to 12 days, so Putin's on the clock. Of course, that really hasn't changed Russia's warmongering in Ukraine, and they're still demanding concessions for any sort of peace settlement, including Ukraine's demilitarization and withdrawal from frontline regions and so forth. So the expedited deadline from Trump and what we see in terms of the actual behavior of the Russians, where does this play, or how does this play out in your estimation in the next couple weeks?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's an important development. I think that the president has concluded that he tried his best to make sure that Putin didn't have to lose face, that Putin could end up and say, look, I got eastern Ukraine is now part of Russia. I got a land bridge to Crimea, which I annexed that peninsula in 2014. I'm saying I won, and that's fine. But Putin is not happy with that. He wants to totally conquer Ukraine. He might, as you say, settle for saying, okay, demilitarize it so that in 3 years when Trump is no longer president, I can then easily take over the country and make it into a colony or a vassal state like Belarus, which is not really independent anymore, a colony like, say, Chechnya or Tatarstan, which and the other colonies that Russia has to its east. This is an important development, and I think if the pressure is severe enough, economic, but also President Trump has begun sending Patriot missiles, which are defensive weapons, but also I think sending, I hope, long-range missiles and saying, unlike what Biden said, you can use them against military targets. We don't want you to use them against civilians. Don't do what the Russians are doing to you. But against military targets, you can use them. Maybe Putin says, okay, this is too much. But it's very hard. Putin, as you and I have discussed that, he sees himself as a czar. He wants to restore the Russian Empire, which became the Soviet Empire. That's when it was biggest under Stalin, which is why, as we've also discussed, he's erecting statues to Stalin because his job, his mission is to restore this empire. And among the results of that is that places like Sweden are doubling their defense expenditures because they know what would happen if Putin should succeed in Ukraine. They know he would turn on them, on the Baltics, on Sweden, on Finland, on Poland. We have to understand what it would mean if Putin were to triumph.
So you expect that, I mean, assuming that the armaments from the U.S. arrive in a timely fashion and the Ukrainians still have the will to fight, which it seems they do, that this is going to continue to be a war of attrition for the foreseeable future?
For the foreseeable future, the more pressure that's put on Putin militarily and economically, the more likely that this war of attrition can end, and again, not on a path to peace, don't expect that, but in a ceasefire and a frozen conflict. There may come a point, and it could come by the end of this year, where the pressure on Putin is so great that he agrees to a ceasefire, and he'll tell his own people, this is a strategic retreat. This is so we can rearm and regroup, which he will do if there's a ceasefire. Understand he will, but so can Ukraine at that point. And frozen conflicts can stay frozen for a long time. Consider, for example, the frozen conflict between North Korea and South Korea. And that's particularly important because we have reports that the North Koreans are sending tens of thousands more soldiers, maybe up to 30,000 more. to Russia to help kill Ukrainians, that the North Koreans are sending huge amounts of weapons, particularly artillery shells, to Putin. And Putin is manufacturing more weaponry and more munitions within a month than probably NATO is in over a year. I don't know the exact. I'm pretty close to being correct in what I'm in the time frame I'm saying there, which also it tells you something else, that the U.S. and Europe need to increase their defense industrial base at a time when there is this axis of anti-Americans, and I'm talking about Xi Jinping in Beijing, I'm talking about Putin in Moscow, I'm talking about, of course, Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang, and a somewhat weakened Ali Khamenei in Tehran. But they are all in an axis against America.
Cliff May, president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, foreign affairs columnist for the Washington Times as well. Cliff, thank you as always.
Always a pleasure, Dan.
And Cliff May joined us in the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
You know what really keeps me up at night? It's the criminals feel more and more bold. They have no fear of any consequences because there are none. So I did what anyone with a family should do. I called Goldilocks. They're not just some cookie-cutter security company. Goldilocks has been protecting Chicagoland homes and businesses for 4 decades, 40 years.